Hello there. Hello, Marion and Kelly and Evelyn and everyone who's here. I'm so glad you can join me. And I'm sorry about yesterday. My phone, in all the rush to get here, I didn't have a great charge on my phone. And what happens is one of those indicators come up that says you only have, it had 20% charge, but that indicator seems to cut out of Instagram, or at least it makes it difficult. So I apologize for that. I gather we got quite a ways into the chapter before it did that. So we're going to start from the scene in the bar in that chapter 9, and then we'll continue on into the first part of chapter 10. Welcome to a fireside reading of The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, Chapter 9, Part 2. Mike went out. Brett and I sat on at the bar. Have another? Might. I needed that, Brett said. We walked up the Rue de l'Ombre. I haven't seen you since I've been back, Brett said. No. How are you, Jake? Fine. Brett looked at me. I say, she said, is Robert Cohen going on this trip? Yes. Why? Don't you think it will be a bit rough on him? Why should it? Who do you think I went down to San Sebastian with? Congratulations, I said. We walked along. What did you say that for? I don't know. What would you like me to say? We walked along and turned a corner. He behaved rather well, too. He gets a little dull. Does he? I've rather thought it would be good for him. You might take up social service. Don't be nasty. I won't. Didn't you really know? No, I said. I guess I didn't think about it. Do you think it will be too rough on him? That's up to him, I said. Tell him you're coming. He can always not come. I'll write him and give him a chance to pull out of it. I did not see Brett again until the night of the 24th of June. Did you hear from Cohn? Rather. He's keen about it. My God. I thought it was rather odd myself. Says he can't wait to see me. Does he think you're coming alone? No, I told him we were all coming down together, Michael and all. He's wonderful, isn't he? They expected their money the next day. We arranged to meet at Pamplona. They would go directly to San Sebastian and take the train from there. We would all meet at the Montoya in Pamplona. If they did not turn up on Monday at the latest, we would go on ahead up to Berguet in the mountains to start fishing. There was a bus to Berguet. I wrote out an itinerary so they could follow us. Bill and I took the train in the morning from the Gare d'Orsay. It was a lovely day, not too hot, and the country was beautiful from the start. We went back into the diner and had breakfast. Leaving the dining car, I asked the conductor for tickets for the first service. Nothing until the 5th. What's this? There were never more than 2 servings of lunch on that train, and always plenty of places for both of them. They're all reserved, the dining car conductor said. There will be a 5th service at 3:30. This is serious, I said to Bill. Give him 10 francs. Here, I said. We want to eat in the first service. The conductor put the 10 francs in his pocket. Thank you, he said. I would advise you, gentlemen, to get some sandwiches. All the places for the first 4 services were reserved at the office of the company. "Y'all go a long way, brother," Bill said to him in English. "I suppose if I'd given you 5 francs, you would have advised us to jump off the train." "Comment?" "Go to hell," said Bill. "Get the sandwiches made and a bottle of wine. You tell him, Jake. And send it up to the next car." I described where we were. In our compartment were a man and his wife and their young son. "I suppose you're Americans, aren't you?" the man asked. "Having a good trip?" "Wonderful," said Bill. "That's what you want to do. Travel while you're young. Mother and I always wanted to get over, but we had to wait a while." "You would have come over 10 years ago if you'd wanted to," the wife said. "What you always said was see America first. I will say we've seen a good deal, take it one way and another." "Say, there's plenty of Americans on this train," the husband said. "They've got 7 cars of them from Dayton, Ohio. They've been on a pilgrimage to Rome, and now they're going down to Biarritz and Lourdes." "So that's what they are, pilgrims, goddamn pilgrims, Puritans," Bill said. "What part of the States you boys from?" "Kansas City," I said. "He's from Chicago." "You both going to Biarritz?" "No, we're going fishing in Spain." "Well, I never cared for it myself. There's plenty that do out where I come from, though. We got some of the best fishing in the state of Montana. I've been out with the boys, but I never cared for it any." "Mighty little fishing you did on them trips," his wife said. He winked at us. "You know how the ladies are. If there's a jug goes along or a case of beer, they think it's hell and damnation." "That's the way men are," his wife said to us. She smoothed her comfortable lap. "I voted against prohibition to please him, and because I like a little beer in the house, and then he talks that way. It's a wonder they even find anyone to marry 'em." "Say," said Bill, "do you know that gang of Pilgrim Fathers have cornered the dining car until 3:30 this afternoon?" "How do you mean?" "They can't do a thing like that. You try and get seats." "Well, Mother, it looks as though we better go back and get another breakfast." She stood up and straightened her dress. "Will you boys keep an eye on our things? Come on, Hubert." They all 3 went up to the wagon restaurant. A little while after they were gone, a steward went through announcing the first service, and pilgrims with their priests commenced filing down the corridor. Our friend and his family did not come back. A waiter passed in the corridor with our sandwiches and the bottle of Chablis, and we called him in. "You're going to work today?" I said. He nodded his head. "They start now at 10:30. "When do we eat?" "Huh, when do I eat?" He left 2 glasses for the bottle, and we paid him for the sandwiches and tipped him. "I'll get the plates," he said, "or bring them with you." We ate the sandwiches and drank the Chablis and watched the country out of the window. The grain was just beginning to ripen, and the fields were full of poppies. The pasture land was green, and there were fine trees, and sometimes big rivers and chateaux off in the trees. At Tours we got off and bought another bottle of wine, and when we got back in the compartment, the gentleman from Montana and his wife and his son Hubert were sitting comfortably. "Is there good swimming in Biarritz?" asked Hubert. "That boy's just crazy till he can get in the water," his mother said. "It's pretty hard on traveling youngsters." "There's good swimming," I said, "but it's dangerous when it's rough." "Did you get a meal?" Bill asked. "We sure did. We sat right there when they started to come in, and they must have thought we were in the party. One of the waiters said something to us in French, and then they just sent 3 of them back.
They thought we were snappers, all right, the man said. It certainly shows you the power of the Catholic Church. It's a pity you boys ain't Catholics. You could get a meal then, all right.
I am, I said. That's what makes me so sore. Finally, at 4:15, we had lunch. Bill had been rather difficult at the last. He buttonholed a priest who was coming back with one of the returning streams of pilgrims.
When do us Protestants get a chance to eat, Father?
I don't know anything about it. Haven't you got tickets?
It's enough to make a man join the clan, Bill said.
The priest looked back at him. Inside the dining car, the waiter served the 5th successive table d'hôte meal. The waiter who served us was soaked through. His white jacket was purple under the arms.
He must drink a lot of wine.
Or wear purple undershirts.
Let's ask him.
No, he's too tired. The train stopped for half an hour at Bordeaux, and we went on through the station for a little walk. There was not time to get into the town. Afterward, we passed through the Landes and watched the sun set. There were wide fire gaps cut through the pines, and you could look up them like avenues and see wooded hills way off. About 7:30, we had dinner and watched the country through the open window in the diner. It was all sandy pine country, full of heather. There were little clearings with houses in them, and once in a while we passed a sawmill. It got dark, and we could feel the country hot and sandy and dark outside of the window. And about 9 o'clock, we got into Bayonne. The man and his wife and Hubert all shook hands with us. They were going on to La Negresse to change for Biarritz.
Well, I hope you have lots of luck, he said.
Be careful about those bullfights. Maybe we'll see you at Biarritz, Hubert said. We got off with our bags and rod cases and passed through the dark station and out to the lights and the line of cabs and hotel buses. There, standing with the hotel runners, was Robert Cohen. He did not see us at first. Then he started forward.
Hello, Jake. Have a good trip?
Fine, I said. This is Bill Gordon.
How are you?
Come on, said Robert. I've got a cab. He was a little near-sighted. I had never noticed it before. He was looking at Bill, trying to make him out. He was shy, too.
We'll go up to my hotel. It's all right. It's quite nice.
We got into the cab, and the cabman put the bags up on the seat beside him and climbed up and cracked his whip, and we drove over the dark bridge and into the town.
I'm awfully glad to meet you, Robert said to Bill. I've heard so much about you from Jake, and I've read your books. Did you get my line, Jack?
The cab stopped in front of the hotel, and we all got out and went in. It was a nice hotel, and the people at the desk were very cheerful, and we each had a good small room. Chapter 10. In the morning it was very bright, and they were sprinkling the streets of the town, and we all had breakfast in a cafe. Bayonne is a nice town. It's like a very clean Spanish town, and it is on a big river. Already, so early in the morning, it was very hot on the bridge across the river. We walked out on the bridge and then took a walk through the town. I was not at all sure Mike's rods would come from Scotland in time, so we hunted a tackle store and finally bought a rod for Bill upstairs over a dry goods store. The man who sold the tackle was out, and we had to wait for him to come back. Finally, he came in, and we bought a pretty good rod, cheap, and 2 landing nets. We went out into the street again and took a look at the cathedral. Cohn made some remark about it being a very good example of something or other. I forget what. It seemed like a nice cathedral, nice and dim like Spanish churches. Then we went up past the old fort and out to the local Syndicat d'Initiative office where the bus was supposed to start from. There they told us the bus service did not start until the 1st of July. We found out at the tourist office what we could pay for a motor car to Pamplona and hired one at a big garage just around the corner from the municipal theater for 400 francs. The car was to pick us up at the hotel in 40 minutes, and we stopped at the cafe on the square where we'd eaten breakfast and had a beer. It was hot, but the town had a cool, fresh, early morning smell, and it was pleasant sitting in the cafe. A breeze started to blow, and you could feel that the air came from the sea. There were pigeons out in the square, and the houses were a yellow, sun-baked color, and I did not want to leave the cafe. But we had to go to the hotel to get our bags packed and pay the bill. We paid for the beers, we matched, and I think Cohen paid, and we went up to the hotel. It was only 16 francs apiece for Bill and me, with 10% added for the service, and we had the bags sent down and waited for Robert Cohen. While we were waiting, I saw a cockroach on the parquet floor that must have been at least 3 inches long. I pointed him out to Bill and then put my shoe on him. We agreed he must have just come in from the garden. It was really an awfully clean hotel. Cohn came down finally, and we all went out to the car. It was a big, closed car with a driver in a white duster with blue collar and cuffs, and we had him put the back of the car down. He piled in the bags, and we started off up the street and out of the town. We passed some lovely gardens and had a good look back at the town, and then we were out in the country, green and rolling, and the road climbing all the time. We passed lots of Basque with oxen or cattle hauling carts along the road, and nice farmhouses, low roofs, and all white plastered. In the Basque country, the land all looks very rich and green, and the houses and villages look well off and clean. Every village had a pelota court, and on some of them kids were playing in the hot sun. There were signs on the walls of the churches saying it was forbidden to play pelota against them, and the houses in the villages had red-tiled roofs, and then the road turned off and commenced to climb, and we were going way up, close along a hillside, with a valley below and hills stretched off back toward the sea. You couldn't see the sea. It was too far away. You could see only hills and more hills, and you knew where the sea was. We crossed the Spanish frontier. There was a little stream and a bridge, and Spanish carabineers with patent leather Bonaparte hats and short guns on their backs on one side, and on the other fat Frenchmen in képis and mustaches. They only opened one bag and took the passports in and looked at them. There was a general store and inn on each side of the line. The chauffeur had to go in and fill out some papers about the car, and we got out and went over to the stream to see if there were any trout. Bill tried to talk some Spanish to one of the carabineers, but it did not go very well. Robert Cohen asked, pointing with his finger, if there were any trout in the stream, and the carabineer said yes, but not many. I asked him if he ever fished, and he said no, that he didn't care for it. Just then, an old man with long, sunburned hair and beard and clothes that looked as though they were made of gunny sacking came striding up to the bridge. He was carrying a long staff, and he had a kid slung over his back, tied by the four legs, the head hanging down. The carabinier waved him back with his sword. The man turned without saying anything and started back up the white road into Spain. "What's the matter with the old one?" I asked. "He hasn't got any passport." I offered the guard a cigarette. He took it and thanked me. "What will he do?" I asked. The guard spat in the dust. "Oh, he'll just wade across the stream." "Do you have much smuggling?" "Oh," he said, "they go through." The chauffeur came out, folding up the papers and putting them in the inside pocket of his coat. We all got in the car, and it started up the white, dusty road into Spain. For a while, the country was much as it had been. Then, climbing all the time, we crossed the top of a col, the road winding back and forth on itself, and then it was really Spain. There were long brown mountains and a few pines and far-off forests of beech trees on some of the mountainsides. The road went along the summit of the col and then dropped down, and the driver had to honk and slow up and turn out to avoid running into two donkeys that were sleeping in the road. We came down out of the mountains and through an oak forest, and there were white cattle grazing in the forest. Down below there were grassy plains and clear streams, and then we crossed a stream and went through a gloomy little village and started to climb again. We climbed up and crossed another high col and turned along it, and the road ran down to the right, and we saw a whole new range of mountains off to the south, all brown and baked-looking and furrowed in strange shapes. After a while we came out of the mountains, and there were trees along both sides of the road, and a stream, and ripe fields of grain, and the road went on very white and straight ahead, and then lifted to a little rise, and off on the left was a hill with an old castle, with buildings close around it, and a field of grain going right up to the walls and shifting in the wind. I was up in front with the driver, and I turned around. Robert Cohen was asleep, but Bill looked and nodded his head. Then we crossed a wide plain, and there was a big river off on the right, shining in the sun from between the line of trees, and away off you could see the plateau of Pamplona rising out of the plain, and the walls of the city, and the broken skyline of the other churches. In back of the plateau were the mountains, and everywhere you looked there were other mountains, and ahead the road stretched out white across the plain, going toward Pamplona. We came into the town on the other side of the plateau, the road slanting up steeply and dustily with shade trees on both sides, and then leveling out through the new part of the town, there building up outside the old walls. We passed the bull ring, high and white and concrete-looking in the sun, and then came into the big square by a side street and stopped in front of the Hotel Montoya. The driver helped us down with the bags. There was a crowd of kids watching the car, and the square was hot, and the trees were green, and the flags hung on their staffs, and it was good to get out of the sun and under the shade of the arcade that runs all the way around the square. Montoya was glad to see us and shook hands and gave us good rooms looking out on the square, and then we washed and cleaned up and went downstairs in the dining room for lunch. The driver stayed for lunch too, and afterward we paid him, and he started back to Bayonne. There were two dining rooms in the Montoya. One is upstairs on the second floor and looks out on the square. The other is down one floor below the level of the square and has a door that opens on the back street that the bulls pass along when they run through the streets early in the morning on their way to the ring. It's always cool in the downstairs dining room, and we had a very good lunch. The first meal in Spain was always a shock, with the hors d'oeuvre, an egg course, 2 meat courses, vegetable salad, and dessert, and fruit. You have to drink plenty of wine to get it all down. Robert Cohn tried to say he did not want any of the second meat course, but we would not interpret for him, and so the waitress brought him something else as a replacement, a plate of cold meats, I think. Cohn had been rather nervous ever since we had met at Bayonne. He did not know whether we knew Brett had been with him at San Sebastian, and it made him rather awkward. "Well," I said, "Brett and Mike ought to get in tonight." "I'm not sure they'll come," Cohn said. "Why not?" Bill said. "Of course they'll come." "They're always late," I said. "I rather think they're not coming," Robert Cohen said. He said it with an air of superior knowledge that irritated both of us. "I'll bet you 50 pesetas they're here tonight," Bill said. He always bets when he's angered, and so he usually bets foolishly. "I'll take it," Cohn said. "Good, you remember it, Jake. 50 pesetas. "I'll remember it myself," Bill said. I saw he was angry and wanted to smooth him down. "It's a sure thing they'll come," I said, "but maybe not tonight." "Want to call it off?" Cohn asked. "No, why should I? Make it 100 if you like." "All right, I'll take that." "That's enough," I said, "or you'll have to make a book and give me some of it." "I'm satisfied," Cohn said. He smiled. "You'll probably win it back at bridge anyway." "You haven't got it yet," Bill said. We went out to walk around under the arcade to the Café Iruña for coffee. Cohn said he was going over and get a shave. "Say," Bill said to me, "have I got any chance on that bet?" "You've got a rotten chance. They've never been on time anywhere. If their money doesn't come, it's a cinch they won't get in tonight." I was sorry as soon as I opened my mouth, but I had to call him. He's all right, I guess, but where does he get this inside stuff? Mike and Brett fixed it up with us about coming down here. I saw Cohn coming over across the square. Here he comes. "Well, let him not get superior and Jewish." "The barber shop's closed," Cohn said. "It's not open till 4. We had coffee at the Iruña, sitting in comfortable wicker chairs, looking out from the cool of the arcade at the big square. After a while, Bill went to write some letters, and Cohn went over to the barber shop. It was still closed, so he decided to go up to the hotel and get a bath, and I sat out in front of the cafe and then went for a walk in the town. It was very hot, but I kept on the shady side of the streets and went through the market and had a good time seeing the town again. I went to the Ayuntamiento and found the old gentleman who subscribes for the bullfight tickets for me every year, and he'd gotten the money I sent him from Paris and renewed my subscriptions, so that was all set. He was the archivist, and all the archives of the town were in his office. That has nothing to do with the story. Anyway, his office had a green baize door and a big wooden door, and when I went out, I left him sitting among the archives that covered all the walls, and I shut both the doors, and as I went out of the building into the street, the porter stopped me to brush off my coat. "You must have been in a motor car," he said. The back of the collar and the upper part of the shoulders were gray with dust. "From Bayonne." Well, well," he said. "I suppose you were in a motor car from the way the dust was." So I gave him 2 copper coins. Part 2 of Chapter 10 tomorrow, same time and place, 5 Pacific at Fireside Reading on Instagram. Sorry about the mix-up yesterday. I'm glad we're back in it, and I will see you all tomorrow. But until then, everyone, I do hope you all stay very, very well.